Hey everyone, welcome back to Binary Corner, and in this video we'll be starting a new series called Next.js. So I've been working with Next.js since past year, and I have made couple of the projects with Next.js, and I thought it will be really cool if I start a new series on YouTube, which we'll be calling as Next.js series. So we'll be answering few of the questions like why Next.js has been so popular, why the front end game is now changing with the Next.js framework. So we'll be exploring those things. How can we do things in Next.js? How can we get started? Because the documentation part is really complex. The things are really complex, and the React framework and then Next.js came along, right? So I was really wondering that let's start a new series on Next.js. And so if you haven't watched my previous video, I have made one video on server-side rendering and how it can change the game. So you can go check out my video. I have posted 2 months ago. So I will highly recommend you to go check out this video, which I've posted 2 months ago. So I was really excited and I was exploring the React framework, and then suddenly the Next.js came along, right? So I started Next.js. I was also doing the development in Gatsby framework, but now the Next.js framework is now quite been my favorite framework, and then making a lot of applications in Next.js. So I was really comfortable with exploring this. So we'll be dividing this series into multiple pieces because the Next.js will be having a lot of things: a dynamic static rendering, and then server side components, route handling, server actions, data fetching, and all these things. So we'll be dividing into multiple pieces, so don't worry. So in today's video we'll be exploring Next.js routing and why Next.js routing is really popular, and it's been a very nice routing mechanism that they have built. Previously they were using some old pages routing, but now they have changed it to the app based routing model. I will show you, and I'll highly recommend you, if you haven't gone through the documentation, go through the documentation, because I will be pulling most of the concepts from the documentation, and the documentation is really briefed about all these concepts, so you can go check out these documents. So let's start with the routing and how the Next.js handles these routing. So I'll start with a really simple example on understanding how the routing is organized. So you can see here the routing is basically organized in a tree structure, right? So if you don't know, tree structure basically contains a tree, and then they have a multiple nodes, right? So is it a binary tree? The answer is no, it's not a binary tree. It could have multiple more legs. So let's start understanding how this tree structure works and how the routing works, right? So let's imagine a really simple concept on as a user, right? As a user, what we do when we visit a website. So let's suppose if I'm visiting a website, www.example.com, right? So our DNS handles it and point it to a server, and server basically returns us with the home page, right? And home page will be maybe hosted on maybe index.html or something like that, right? So index.html or something like that, right? But the main questions come: how will we handle the routings? And what I mean by routing is, let's suppose if I want to have a sub page called dashboard, how can I handle this dashboard endpoint, or how can I handle a setting page or something like that, right? So we need some sort of mechanism. The way how we are doing in the React was basically we are using React routing library, which is basically handled all our routing requests and all these things. But in Next.js is a complete framework, right? It's been a framework, so the Next.js comes along with its own routing mechanism. We call it as a app-based routing. We have a basic application, and basic application could have multiple pages. And how we'll be dividing these pages is basically into a folder structure. I'll be showing you where we'll be having a subfolders called blog. We'll be having a subfolders called dashboard. In this folder, we can have multiple more folders called analysis, and settings, and inside the blog we can have some sort of slug kind of thing. So I'll be explaining you what this slug is, but the naming is basically like this. So now how it handled, it's basically like we have an app folder, and inside this app folder we can create subfolders. We can have another page called blog, right? And we can have another page called settings, right? And how it works is basically is the Next.js find this route, and if a user is visiting, let's suppose www.example.com, right? So how Next.js behave is basically it routes this and serve the content inside this to our dashboard endpoint. If someone is visiting dashboard endpoint, then they will see everything which will be inside the dashboard. So you get the idea, right? So if they're visiting settings, they will be serving the settings, right? So you get the basic idea how this folder structure is working, right? Now the question comes, you might be asking, bro, how the example.com will behave, right? We have defined the sub routes, right? But how the example, if a user is visiting example.com, then there is no file, right? How will be handling that, right? So answer comes like we'll be having the content inside the app folder itself, right? So I'll be explaining you what is the file name and what is this. So basically we'll be having some files which will be directly serving to the home page, right? Which is example.com. So let's go to the demo now, and I'll be showing you how to set up this routes. So basically what you need to do is basically first install this Nextjs application. So now you can see it created my project successfully. So if I do ls and then if I go cd route, and if I do code dot, so it will open my project into a separate node.js, and I can close the previous one, right? So now you can see it created my Next.js project, and how I will be serving this project is basically go to package.json, and you need to run this, right? So I'll open the terminal. I will do npm run dev, right? So this will how you will run your project. So it will now start serving on localhost 3000. So if I go to localhost 3000, you will see our Next.js application will be up running. So now you can see the basic page which comes with the Next.js. So basically it has some template. So now you can see it says get started by editing this file, right? So you can see we have a folder called src which will have all this files. So basically if you want to define some of the redux or store or something like that, so you can define your folders like that. So if I want to have assets, I can name the assets inside the src, right? So that's how you will be having those things, right? Or if you want to have some components, then I can have a component folder inside the src, right? So I'm explaining you how the folder structures are laid out. But now if you see, right, we have a app folder, right? And this is a default folder, so don't try to rename this, because this is how the Next.js works. It reads out this app, basically the app folder, and then it finds all the subdirectories and folders and all these things inside the app, right? So the naming is really important for the Next.js to know that this is the folder which has to be picked up. So let's explore what's inside this folder. So if I open this folder, you can see we have some basic files, icon, so we can delete this, I don't need as of now. And then we have a global css which is basically a css file, and then we have something called layout, right? I'll be explaining you about the layout file in the next video, but you can see we have another file called page.tsx, right? And this is the really important file. So I'm trying to delete this file, but I think Next.js requires this layout inside the app directory, which is basically is necessary step. But if I create a new folder, right, and if I name it as dashboard, right, so it won't create the layout file inside this, right? So let's delete this folder for now, and then you can see we have a page.tsx, right? So let's open this page.tsx and let's see what's inside this page.tsx, right? So now you can see a very similar thing. So it's basically a React code, and we can delete this entire file, right? And then what we need to do is export a function, and this is the necessary step. We need to export default function from this file, and then we can name this any file. So let's call it as home.page, right? Home page, and then make it as React component, so it will return a div, right? And then we'll say hello world, right? And then just to be really nice, I will style something in this, and then I will do a text. I will do a text and xxl or xl. I will do a 6xl or 5xl, right? So what I will do is basically clean this global CSS file. So I'll just keep the Tailwind imports, and then I will delete everything besides that, right? And then basically what I'll do is I'm just importing this in the layout file. So basically you can import this global CSS in page.tsx also. But just to keep a general note that this layout file is basically providing a layout, right? So layout basically means we'll have all the necessary imports which is based on the layouts, right? So I'm importing this global.css, and then I have a file got page.tsx, and I will say text 5xl, right? Something like that. So if I save this, So now you can see, if you go to localhost 3000, you can see text hello world is now rendered with 5XL font, right? So this is how the folder structure is now behaving, right? So let's suppose if I want to create some sub routes, and if I want to have a page called dashboard, how will this work, right? But right now you can see, if I go to dashboard, it will say 404 not found. So let's define our dashboard route. So basically what we'll do is we'll create a folder inside the app directory, and we'll name it as dashboard, right? But you will see it won't work, because the dashboard doesn't have the page.tsx or js file or ts file. So we'll create a page.tsx, right? And then you will see it will still not work, because we haven't exported anything, right? So let's export our default function, and then we'll name it as dashboard page, or maybe dashboard page, and then we'll return something like h1. This is a dashboard page, right? So now if I visit, I think I am not visiting the correct. So if I visit the dashboard, you will see this is dashboard page is now rendered correctly, right? So this is how the folder structure behaves. So let's imagine if I want to have some sort of a sub page inside this, then how will it work? So basically, if someone is visiting slash settings inside this, you will see it will say 404, right, not found. So the way how we defined it, basically we'll create another folder inside the dashboard, and we'll name it as settings, right? And then we'll create a file called page.tsx, right? And then similar to that, we'll just copy paste what was inside the dashboard page. So we'll do a control alt copy. So we'll just paste this and name it as maybe dashboard settings, right? Settings.page, and I will name it as this is a settings, right? Settings page. So now if we visit the setting page, you will see this is setting page is now rendered. And if you go back, so all the routes are now handled. So if you go back, you will see the dashboard is now rendered, right? If you go front, the settings. If you go back, dash. You get the context on how these routes are working in Next.js. So let's keep it short in this video, and let's explore other things, which is basically the layouts and other file structure, what we have and why those things are necessary. Because we have a couple of the things we can have define these layouts, then we can have some defaults. So all these things are really necessary, and how we're gonna use that to build our website. So stay tuned, and if you haven't subscribed to our channel, make sure you have subscribed to our channel. If you have any questions, you can comment down in the comment section. I'll try to answer your questions. And if you have any suggestions on what topics I should take next in Next.js series, let me know in the comment section. So I will try to take those, right? And I'll see you in the next video. Till then, take care. Goodbye.